Today we are ranking every weapon for Apex Legends Season 15, no BS. Let's get you what you need. We have a singular gun at D tier, which I deem to be the poor or underwhelming weapons. The worst gun in the game, something's gotta be it, and for me, it's the newly nerfed P2020 fitting the spot. The P20 did lose those hammer point rounds, which in my opinion was really the only thing that sometimes made it a viable secondary. No one goes through a match hoping to pick up a P20, and really it's just a transfer weapon until you find something else on the ground that is better. The only thing that does go in the P2020's favor is its overall damage per mag actually is not too bad, but at the end of it, there's little reason to pick up this gun over basically any other SMG or shotgun. I greatly miss the old hammer point rounds that doubled the health damage to enemies, but this was all the way back during Season 8. The okay and sometimes viable weapons are those in C tier, and we begin with the almost companion weapon to the P2020, and it is the Mozambique. Don't let its C tier rating fool you though. The Mozam can actually have some extreme moments of brilliance, but the removal of the hammer point rounds is kind of a big deal, and it does lower the secondary swap to and one-tap someone down potential. It's only a 15 damage nerf when you are up against the health of enemies, but this does lower enough to the point where the EVA is just better, and the one-tap potential from the other two shotguns, the Massive and PK, has always been superior. The one thing that the Beak does have is the range advantage, and you can connect a full 45 hit from a substantial distance away, which is definitely nice. The Mozam is definitely not bad. It can sometimes be viable. It's just that there are a lot of other weapons that are quite a bit better. Our second C tier weapon is going to be the Devotion at C+. All I can say is that the Devotion for me is one of the most random and hard to put my finger on when it comes to a weapons ranking. If you do get a turbo, it's more like a high B or a low A weapon, but even then, the turbo did have a nerf of 1 damage per bullet when it is equipped. The recoil is pretty absurd on the Devotion, and it really just requires way too many specific conditions for it to really be great. You need to be super close, you need to have a turbo, you need to have an extended mag. You might as well just use the Volt or Car SMG, which are kind of similar weapons in terms of what you're trying to achieve, which is a fast time to kill, but they also have much better handling than the Devotion. The Devotion can be great if you are mega close, but when it comes to anything more than this, any other assault rifle or LMG is just gonna be better. Next up are the weapons in B tier, which do consist of a handful of weapons which are definitely good and viable, but not exactly meta. The first on my list is going to be the L-Star, which did receive a small buff of the recoil when you are first starting to shoot the weapon. The L-Star can be pretty surprising and somewhat competitive in more mid to close range, but overall, the gun doesn't do much that other weapons cannot do. The recoil on the L-Star is not bad, but the fact that you can just shoot something like the Volt SMG much more accurately at range kind of just puts it in a why bother using this type of gun category. The only feature this thing does have going for it is the no reload factor, but in general, any other assault rifle and many of the SMGs are going to just be better than the L-Star, and there are very few reasons for you to pick it up. It may not be S tier for general power, but it's absolutely in the S tier for a good time, and this is the Sentinel sniper rifle, also in B. The Sentinel can have some moments of greatness, but it really lacks the steady stream of damage and flexibility you can do with many of the other mid to longer range weapons. Even charged up, it still is going to lack overall power, and you aren't going to be able to one-tap many people that are rocking a blue Evo shield or better. I also don't love using valuable resources of shield cells to make this thing competitive. You waste resources and time by charging it up, which is not the greatest if you are in a bind. The Sentinel definitely isn't bad, but there are just so many other options, and unless you are looking for a good time, I think I'd pass on it. Backing this up is also going to be the Charge Rifle in B tier. The Charge Rifle is almost the opposite of the Sentinel, whereas it is really a great gun for steady stream of damage dealing, and if you are in a slower ranked game or you're playing more passive, this gun does very well at farming the entire squad's Evo shields. It's not going to be that sweet playmaking, let's get a knock type of gun though. I still think there are better mid to long range options for general playmaking, and the biggest issue with the Charge is that it does require a ton of ammo if you are going to be using it for an extended amount of time, and because of this, it really requires you to have a blue backpack or better. Overall, it's pretty good to be that really annoying player that can provide constant pressure and slow enemies down, but in a pub smashing fighting sense, it's not the best. Completing the trio of snipers, we do have the longbow, and it is also going to be the first B+ weapon, meaning I do rate it at the borderline amazing and in the worthy of using tier. The longbow is my preferred and favorite sniper, mainly due to the sheer ease of use and the steady stream of damage dealing that it is also capable of doing. It's also very forgiving, which is a plus. The big issue that does leave it a little bit lower, at least comparably to some of the other guns again, is that the bullet velocity is pretty slow. not to mention the ammo per stack is reduced unlike both the G7 and 30-30 repeater. The longbow with a purple mag and skull piercer can be extremely deadly with a 2-tap heady, and it has a really great damage per mag output that anyone can do well with. Overall, snipers right now are in a pretty good spot, but the exclusion of Stormpoint and the addition of Olympus in the map rotation will more than likely be more friendly to close range meta options, and at the end of everything, close range is still going to be king. An uncharacteristic placement for me is going to be the Mastiff at B+. This is probably the biggest surprise as a whole for me, as the stiff returning to the ground has definitely left me disappointed, especially with the Peacekeeper also being in the crafter for the first half of the season. The Mastiff is just not what it used to be, even before it was care packaged. A full stiff body shot is going to get you a nice 88 hit, but those 2 outside pellets being mega wide makes this extremely hard to consistently do, and more times than not, you're looking at a 66 body hit at best, which means you might as well just be using the EVA 8, which has a more compressed spread and a faster fire rate. The Mastiff is really good at dealing damage over a more consistent time though, since it does have that 1 shell reload at a time. I think we are absolutely going through a transition away from the secondary shotgun meta we had been in for an eternity, and I'm not too disappointed by it, as it does switch things up and it makes it feel pretty fresh. The meta we are entering though is definitely a more hyper focus on pairing your main weapon up with an SMG, and the weakest SMG for me is going to be the Alternator. This being said, the Alternator is actually one of the best weapons in the game when you are looking for something very reliable off of the drop. The damage per round, easy recoil, and good mag size all makes for a very consistent and easy to use weapon that will be great when people are not kitted up. The only reason why this gun gets a lower rating than most of the others is because it does lack in the time to kill aspect, and while the recoil does make it very easy to use, you might as well just use the R301. That being said, if you want an R301-like experience, maybe just a little bit more close range viability, pairing up the Alternator with another SMG like the R99 does make for a pretty great up close and personal combo. Our final B+ weapon is going to be the Hemlock Assault Rifle. The Hemlock slipped a little bit for me this season, not because it had any nerfs or anything, but because the other weapons I considered to do something somewhat similar are just better. Mainly, this is going to be the G7. We're going to have more on this later, but the G7 being double tapped and the Hemlock being a burst kind of means they are very similar in their function. The Hemlock is probably one of the most versatile weapons in the game for covering all ranges, but that being said, it doesn't really do anything excellently. It kind of just does everything averagely, from long-range single-shot firing, mid-range bursting, and even some close-range bursting if you are in a pinch. Again, the Hemlock is good, it's just that there's something better for pretty much every other scenario in the game. Hold up! If you're not using the sponsor of today's video, you're doing it wrong. Outplayed is the #1 way for you to create and record your highlights, and the best part, you don't have to do anything other than just download the program. It automatically works in the background, and it does work for over 300 games. You also have the customization to select the individual moments you want to record, from your kills, assists, wins, and your deaths if that's your thing. And there is even built-in editing software to make things super easy. Once you're all done, sharing to your favorite socials is a breeze. Wait no longer, click the link in the description or pinned comment for more. Thanks to both you and Outplayed for the support. Moving on are the weapons in A tier, which are my amazing and absolutely worthy pickups. We have quite a few of them, but the first returnee is going to be a very good option for the longer range meta we are kind of in, and it is going to be the 30-30 repeater. The 30-30 does a lot what the longbow can do, but it's a little bit better in my opinion. It has a skull piercer for really deadly headshots when you do open a fight, and when you need a reload, the built-in double reload feature does mean you have less downtime, meaning you can deal more consistent damage over time, which is going to be nice. Another thing that is also a leg up over snipers is the fact that it does use heavy ammo, which is a little bit more readily available. Overall, the 30-30 is a great mid-range poking weapon with some long-range and even close-range viability if you do have a good hand for hipfire. A weapon that I think continues to be slept on is going to be the Prowler SMG, and for my Season 15 list, this is the gun that I think is the most sleeper out of them all. While the Prowler is not as competitive in terms of its range or time to kill as, say, the Vol and or the Car SMG, the Prowler has an absurd level 3 mag size of 35, which makes it one of the best close-range weapons when you are going in headfirst and taking on multiple enemies at once. I do understand it's not going to be for everyone, as burst weapons just aren't. Additionally, with that, I do think it requires an extended magazine to make it actually be useful and less of a liability. Overall, though, don't sleep on the Prowler and be on the lookout for the gold ones this season. They're pretty crazy. A weapon that many will not be using in the first half of the season is going to be the Spitfire LMG since it isn't the crafter, but overall, I do think the Spitfire is still a viable weapon, but it does come with one huge thing that you do need to know. This is the fact that the Spitfire is not really a competitive gun in terms of the time to kill aspect, and you are going to be using this gun for purely its magazine size and its potential to dish out crazy amount of damage to enemies as a whole. It is going to be paramount that you are aware of this so you don't get yourself into trouble. Going in headfirst with the Spitfire can be a pretty big deal, and you're going to lose many close range fights. I do think it's critical to run with an SMG, so when you do get too close to enemies, you can't swap to this and still be competitive. My best advice if you are looking to rain fire is to keep your distance and let it spray. Next up is a weapon that did see a very small nerf this season, and it is the Havoc. When I say small, I mean literally the turbocharger getting 1 less damage per round is so insignificant that I don't think it really is going to change how you are using this weapon. A 200 shielded enemy before the nerf took 12 body shots, and a 200 shielded enemy after the nerf still takes 12 body shots. We do see a 1 round difference when an enemy has a red evo, but overall, the Havoc is still an insane weapon that I do think really needs the turbocharger to make it very competitive. It doesn't mean it's bad without it. It just requires a bit different of a type of play style where you gotta be a little bit more passive and pre-firing as you are going around corners, and you can't be quite as flexible with it. A turboed up Havoc though is more like an A+ or even S tier weapon, as it's very good with a level 3 mag, and having 36 rounds is also pretty nuts. My final straight A tier weapon is going to be the newly buffed triple take. If you missed the buffs, you can now shoot faster, and the biggest of them all, the choke is only 0.75 seconds rather than the previous 1.1 seconds to reduce the spread. This may sound small, but this buff is actually massive, and it makes this gun be way more useful. Previously, you had to wait just a little too long to fire the rounds off and get a full damage hit in there, but now you can do it much more easily, and you can use the gun just in a normal manner now. The biggest thing going for the triple take, in my opinion, is its ease of use, and due to the 3 pellet spread, that makes getting partial tags a breeze, and thus slowing enemies down and farming evo shields is also pretty great with this gun. I don't think the triple take is the gun you want if you're really looking for that stopping power, knocking players super quick. It is capable of this, but overall I find it's really the gun for you if you want an easy damage farmer that is reliable, or you're just looking to split up your ammo types from your squad by foregoing a 30-30 or a G7. My first A+ weapon is going to be my specific premier long range and mid range poking weapon, and it is the G7 Scout. The G7 can kind of do it all, and I feel like the only thing it really needs is an optic. You don't really need a stock magazine, barrel stabilizer, or even the double tap for this thing to be pretty good. However, getting any of these just improves its potential output. The G7 feels mega easy to use, and for whatever reason, getting a gray magazine gives you an extra 5 rounds, which to have an extended mag give you an extra 50% ammo is pretty crazy. I do want to specifically discuss the double tap. If you aren't using this thing, you need to be. It decreases your overall recoil when you are spamming the gun, and the gun literally doesn't move when you fire it now, which makes massive damage output with a double heady pretty easy. After opening a fight though, I kind of think that the single shot is going to be the way to go, especially if they are a little bit further. The G7 I think is the gun for you if you want something to poke enemies constantly, and is even viable in the closer ranges if you are in a pinch. I had a very difficult time determining where to put the R99, as it did receive a small buff in the level 2 and 3 magazines by gaining an extra round. This for me though was not really enough to push it into the S tier or meta category though. The main reason is that the R99 does struggle in its damage potential when you don't have a mag, due to the damage per round being pretty low comparably to the other SMGs that are above it. That aside, it's one of the fastest killing guns in the game, which does make it a near meta contender. It's one that really anyone shouldn't shy away from using. There's just better options in the game right now. A weapon that did get a nerf, and one again that not many will be using for the first part of the season, is going to be the Peacekeeper shotgun. The shotgun is still the shoddy to use if you want that biggest swap to your secondary and one tap your opponents down. It did get a similar nerf to the Mastiff, with the projectile growth being reduced, which will make getting big damage a little bit harder. It does make it more of an extreme close range weapon, which does make sense. It is a shotgun. There's not really a lot to say about the Peacekeeper. It's been really good for a long time, maybe ever, and even though it's not as good as it once was, it's still a really good weapon that you should consider using for your secondary. I have 3 final weapons for the A+ category that I do want to talk about all at once, and it is the 3 care package weapons of the Bocek, Rampage, and the big guy, Kraber. I usually don't consider these guns fair to rank when comparing it to the other weapons, because they are situational. You're not just going to get them that often, and sometimes, you know, dropping your current weapon for a weapon that isn't in the care package that's going to run out of ammo is a pretty big deal. While I think the G7 is the best poking weapon on the ground, the Bocek definitely wins in this category overall. It's easy, and farming damage is just a breeze. I don't think it's an S tier gun, mainly due to the fact that it's not competitive or a fast TTK weapon, when it does come to a close range fight. Second to this is going to be the Rampage LMG. The Rampage saw a nice buff that is now charged up when you do pick it up out of the care package, and this is good. And if you are funding around the care package, picking it up, dishing out some rounds is good, but overall, I don't think it's really worth grabbing in the long run. Running out of ammo makes this thing a problem, and I don't think it's really that competitive in the TTK aspect. The final weapon is going to be the Kraber. Ultimately, I can't give this thing the S tier rating since it just won't one-tap someone to the head anymore. This is a pretty big deal when you go into an endgame situation, and it lowers its overall playmaking potential to the point where I might just rather have the reliability of something like a G7, where you are able to apply more pressure at way less of a risk. Not to mention, if you do get a Kraber too early, you're going to have to drop it, and this again can be pretty problematic when you do get to an endgame. Before we move on to the S tier weapons, be sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't yet, consider subscribing for more content that is always on the way. I appreciate the support, and if you are ever looking to play with someone that is not randoms, because that does below, hop into my community Discord. We have over 14,000 members, and you can find others to play with in there. S tier contains the weapons that are the meta guns in Apex, and we do have a few to discuss. I'm going to start off by talking about what is probably the best gun in the game, so we can't get out of the way, and it is the RE45. I can't believe I just said that, but the RE is the #1 gun in the game if you are looking for a fast time to kill, blazing fast handling, a good mag size for taking on multiple enemies, and of course, a reload to back it up. Obviously, this weapon being care packaged is the main reason it's like this, and much like the alternator was a year ago, anything with disruptor rounds is always pretty much just overpowered. I think it's fine though, since it is a care package gun, but it's not often I'm gonna say a gun is a must pick up if you do find it, and that's absolutely the case for the RE45. Now that that is out of the way, let's kick it off with my first straight up S tier weapon, and it is gonna be one of the best secondaries, the EVA 8. Unlike both the Mastiff and the Peacekeeper, the EVA saw no changes, and it solidifies itself as one of the best weapons in the game if you are looking for the pure potential to dish out a wild amount of damage in a very short period of time. A full 8-round mag of the EVA can do nearly 450 damage in just over 2 seconds, which means you can almost 1v2 two full red EVO players in a perfect world. This potential makes this gun very good to run, and of course, it will let you conserve your inventory spots, which is harder to do when you are running an SMG backup. If you want something that is a great just pull it and rip it type weapon, the EVA is definitely going to be the premier secondary for this. The Wingman continues to be one of the most dominant weapons in Apex Legends, and thus, it really has never not been an upper tier weapon. The change to sniper ammo last season was a bit of an odd one, but overall, it seems to be a solid change. It doesn't really affect its performance, and the power of a quick headshot from the Wingman cannot be understated. Another fairly nice thing is that the Wingman does really not need a lot of ammo to be effective, although the sniper ammo smaller sacks can hurt at times. It's definitely a higher skilled weapon, but it's definitely something that everyone should learn to use, as those who are at the top of the game and are using it can easily make it function almost more like a mid-range weapon, as well as a close-range weapon and a replacement for a shotgun. The alternate and primary weapon for many Apex players is going to be the Flatline. The Flatline has a few perks that does make it a very good weapon that few can beat. For one, the damage per round is good, and in conjunction with a 30-round mag with the level 3 mag, it means you have a better overall damage per magazine. The slower fire rate also means that you aren't going to shoot as many shots into the abyss if you are off your target. A second great feature of the Flatline is going to be its hip firepower. It is very good and often can function great as a close-range spray and pray weapon that is also pretty competitive. The Anvil receiver being back does also mean that the Flatline has a little bit more offensive long-range power, and really, if you don't want to use the R301 or if you are trying to split up ammo from your team, this is definitely one of the best options in the game. Next up is going to be a weapon that actually had a nerf this season, and what happened to the weapon was basically nothing. The Volt for me is still my king of hybrid power, as really it's easy to use and it kind of just does it all. The nerf to the Volt made it only so you couldn't as effectively long range beam someone with it, which is understandable as it's an SMG. The Volt is the weapon for you if you want a slightly more close range experience than say the R301 or the Flatline, while also being able to split ammo types from your teammates. A Volt with the 2x optic, to be honest, is also pretty viable, and I find any decent to great player can extend its range this way. The Volt also has one of the fastest time to kills in the game, with a decent magazine size to back it up. Another great thing about the Volt is that it's kind of just ready to go off the pickup, and while attachments are helpful, they are definitely not required to get a lot of effective playmaking in. I have two weapons at the S+ here, which I deem to be the best weapons in the game, and the first is a weapon that pretty much always makes it to this spot, season after season after season after season, and it is the R301. I really don't have a lot to say at this point. The R301 has been virtually the same for almost 3 years. It's brainlessly easy to use, light ammo is common, and you aren't going to struggle finding it in your matches. The time to kill is insane, and it pretty much works at all ranges. And again, this is especially true with the Anvil receiver being back into the game. This is the gun for you if you are a new player who is struggling, or if you are someone that is looking to drop into the ALGS. And the last weapon to talk about is going to be the Car SMG. The Car SMG has really just continued to gain stock in the meta of Apex Legends to the point where it's really hard to recommend its competitor gun like the R99. The Car SMG beats it out in the damage per bullet, meaning it's better off the drop and you don't need a laser sight. The Car SMG also has the added flexibility between ammo types and extended magazines, which again means you'll never have an ammo issue and you'll be faster to get this thing kitted. And then of course, the Car SMG is the best SMG when it comes to the pure time to kill, which makes it the obvious pickup as both your backup to your primary assault rifle and backup close range spray weapon. For you pub warriors out there, you can also rock this as your primary, and really it's the gun you want if you want to know you have the best possible chance at every fight you take. If you missed it, check out my legend tier list for the season. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.